There are moments in history that are carved so deeply into our collective memory that the world will never forget them. The booming cannons, the endless trenches, the gas masks and barbed wire. World War I is remembered as the war that changed everything, the end of empires, the birth of modern warfare, and the loss of millions. But beneath the thunder of artillery and the fog of battle, there were other stories. Stories that were never told, moments that slipped through the cracks of history books, mysteries that remain unsolved to this day. What really happened to the crew of a ship that arrived with dinner still warm, but no one on board? Who fired the first bullet that drew Britain into the war, and why can't anyone agree on it? Why did the most feared pilot of the war fall from the sky with a bullet no one could claim? And what happened to a peaceful village tinsmith who left for war, only for 24 bodies to be found in his house? These are not tales of glory. They are shadows, fragments. Ghosts that still whisper through the silence of the century that followed. In today's video, we will journey back into the war that birthed the modern age, not to study battles, but to uncover the truths too strange to be remembered. Fasten your seat belt, because what you're about to hear might change how you see the Great War forever. And remember, you just might find incredible luck if you like and subscribe before this video ends. Every war begins with a sound, and in the First World War, it was the sound of a gun. But more than a century later, we still don't know who fired the first shot on behalf of the British Empire. History often points to July 29, 1914, when an Austro-Hungarian warship opened fire on Serbian positions along the Danube. That shot started the unraveling. But for Britain, the beginning is far more uncertain. One account says it happened on August 22nd in a quiet corner of Belgium. A cavalry drummer named Sergeant E. Thomas saw 4 German horsemen approaching. He fired. No one was hit, but it was the first shot Britain claimed on European soil. And yet 10 days before that, a very different story was unfolding. In Togoland, West Africa, a British-controlled colony, a native soldier named Alhaji Grunchi was guarding a wireless station. When German troops approached, he opened fire. It wasn't in Europe, but it was still in service of the British Crown. There's even another claim. August 5, 1914, at a harbor near Melbourne, Australia. A British artillery unit was ordered to fire a warning shot across the bow of a German cargo ship attempting to flee. No one was hurt, but the shot worked. The ship turned back. It became the first enemy vessel captured in the entire war. So which of these was the first shot? Was it in Europe? Was it in Africa? Was it a warning or a declaration? Perhaps the real mystery isn't the shot itself, but why we've never agreed on where war truly began. He flew through the sky like a crimson ghost. His name was Manfred von Richthofen, but the world called him the Red Baron. With 80 confirmed kills, he was the most feared pilot of World War I. Enemy pilots knew his scarlet plane, and many never saw it twice. But on April 21, 1918, the sky betrayed him. That morning, the Red Baron pursued a young Canadian pilot, Wilfrid May, a novice barely clinging to control. May's squadron leader, Captain Arthur Roy Brown, spotted the chase and turned to help, but the Baron didn't turn back. He kept chasing May deeper and deeper into enemy territory. Then, a single shot, not from above, from the ground. The Baron's plane wobbled, then descended in a slow, spiraling fall. He landed softly in a French field. By the time Australian troops reached him, he was already dead. A bullet had torn through his chest, shattering his heart and lungs. But who fired it? Captain Roy Brown was credited in official reports. Yet even he admitted he wasn't sure. The trajectory didn't match. The angle was too low. Some said the bullet came from an Australian machine gun. Others pointed to Sergeant Cedric Popkin, whose position on the ridge aligned with the fatal shot. But no proof ever surfaced. The most feared ace of the war fell from the sky, not in a blaze of glory, but from a single, anonymous bullet. From the clouds or the mud, we may never know, and that's what makes it so haunting. It was just a small cargo ship, the Zabrina. She set sail in October 1917 from Falmouth, England, bound for a short 30-hour journey across the Channel. On board, a shipment of coal and a crew whose names history forgot. But 2 days later, French forces spotted the vessel run aground near Roselle Point. There was no distress call, no signs of damage. And most unsettling of all, no one on board. The lifeboat was still tied in place. The cooking fire was still smoldering. On the dining table, dinner was neatly set for 5, plates, utensils still warm. It was as if the crew had simply vanished in mid-meal. At first, some blamed a storm. Maybe they fell overboard while securing cargo, but the sea had been calm. And if they'd drowned, where were the bodies? Others whispered of German submarines. U-boats had been spotted nearby. Perhaps the crew had been taken, or worse, silenced. But then a new theory emerged, one no one wanted to believe. Official records, uncovered long after the war, revealed something strange. There weren't 5 men aboard, there were 23, far too many for a coal run. That's when suspicion turned to something else. The Zabrina might not have been a merchant vessel at all. It may have been a Q-ship, a decoy, armed and disguised to bait German subs into ambush. If the enemy discovered the ruse, the crew might have never had a chance. Was it sabotage, a silent battle at sea, or something else entirely? The Zabrina never told her story, and the sea never gave it back. While millions were dying in the mud-soaked fields of Europe, something even darker was hiding in a quiet village near Budapest. His name was Béla Kiss. To neighbors, he was just a mild-mannered tinsmith, polite, solitary, forgettable. When the war broke out in 1914, he joined the army like thousands of other men. He locked his house and vanished into the front lines. 2 years passed, and rumors came Kiss had died in battle. His landlord, thinking the house was abandoned, entered to prepare it for rent. What he found would haunt Hungary forever. In the back room stood 7 sealed metal drums, heavy and rusted. At first, they seemed like old fuel containers. Until one was opened, the smell hit first, not gasoline, death. Inside, the body of a woman strangled, preserved in alcohol. The police were called, and as they opened the others, the horror multiplied. 24 bodies, all women. All hidden inside the barrels. Letters in the home revealed Kiss had lured women through Lonely Hearts ads. He promised love and stole their lives, but the worst was yet to come, because Béla Kiss wasn't dead. He had been recovering in a military hospital, using another man's identity. By the time police arrived, he was gone. After that, sightings came from everywhere: France, Hungary, even New York City, where a janitor vanished just before investigators arrived. Was it him? No one ever knew. Did he keep killing? Did he escape justice forever? Or did he live a quiet, peaceful life, with hands still stained by horror? No one ever found Béla Kiss, and no one ever opened those barrels expecting the dead. It was the largest ship in the U.S. Navy at the time, over 500 feet long, heavily armed, built like a fortress. Her name was USS Cyclops. She set sail in February 1918, carrying 309 souls and a massive load of manganese ore, bound from Brazil to Baltimore. But Cyclops never arrived. The last anyone heard, she made a stop in Barbados for engine repairs. After that, no radio, no debris, no signal, just silence. The U.S. Navy launched a massive search. Nothing. Some blamed storms. Others said she was overloaded. Then came darker whispers: German spies, Bermuda Triangle, or even something not of this earth. A ship that size and entire crew vanished, as if the ocean had swallowed them whole. But war doesn't just forget ships. Sometimes it forgets children. His name was John Parr. He was just 14 years old when he walked into a recruitment office in London and lied about his age. He wanted to serve, to be a man, to wear the uniform. In August 1914, John was sent to the front with only a rifle and a bicycle. His mission, scout the woods near Mons, Belgium. He never returned. Some said he was ambushed. Others believed he was mistaken for the enemy, killed by friendly fire in the fog of confusion. No one really knew. His mother wrote letters, begged for answers. None came. And in one of history's cruelest ironies, John Parr, the first British soldier to die in World War I, is buried directly across from George Edwin Ellison, the last British soldier to die just hours before the war ended. One boy never got to grow up, one man never got to go home, and both were lost in a war that swallowed too much. 1430 closing words. You may not believe every story you've heard today. Some details are still debated. Some have been twisted by time, but the silence they left behind, that's real. The Great War ended over a century ago, and yet its deepest mysteries still breathe. Be sure to subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications. We'll see you in the next video.